Hello there, people, and welcome to another episode of Flight Box. This is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. All right, so we've got some things to unpack. This is going to be a slightly different episode than I originally thought it was going to be, because this isn't necessarily going to be a comprehensive breakdown of the Peacemaker Season 2 finale, Episode 8, Full Nelson. No, it's going to be a bit more of a come to Zod meeting, if you will, with respect to that. And I'm going to elaborate on some more of this fan stuff also on Patreon as well. But I definitely wanted to start the conversation here because there's some stuff that we do need to talk about with respect to the fandom. And it definitely directly relates to this episode. It relates to James Gunn and the DCU going forward. Everything, all of that. It's going to be a really nice, frank, and subjective discussion. But before diving into all of that, I want to remind everybody that you can find this show and all of my other shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcast, whether that is on Apple Podcasts, whether it is at the Flightcast YouTube channel, whether it is on Spotify, whether it is on Pandora. You can find this show and the main show, The Flightcast, which I didn't realize New York Comic Con was today. We're definitely going to have to talk about some stuff with respect to that, especially a couple of Star Trek announcements and a new trailer for Star Trek Starfleet Academy. How about that? And a premiere date, yes. Decent amount of stuff to talk about on the next episode of the main show, The Flightcast. There's also Flight Chat, the listener feedback show, which all of you send in your emails and your comments and whatnot. And we have a conversation about movies, TV, and other assorted media surrounding that, usually over the weekend. And of course, this particular show and also Flight Review. I posted a new episode of Flight Review yesterday. I'm trying something different. I'm trying out actually recording the review episode in the car on the way home from the actual movie premiere, because I went and saw Tron Ares yesterday and gave a good comprehensive review. It went over a lot of thoughts, because I feel like that is a fresh time, like a fresh watch, like as you're processing, as I'm processing, as I'm putting things together. That's a good time to get things out aloud, especially since I have a long drive from my favorite movie theaters, if you will, to where I live in that regard. So that episode is posted there as well. Like I said, at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcast. Also want to take a moment to thank all of the supporters of patreon.com/theflightcast. Like I said, I'm going to be dropping another episode on Patreon of Saturday Soliloquy, because I'm recording this particular episode on a Saturday. I'm going to be dropping a Patreon episode talking more about fan expectations, if you will, because that's something that we can never get enough of talking about, apparently, it seems, especially when stuff like this comes up. But hopefully you've been enjoying all the other bonus content there, bonus episodes of Flight Box, bonus episodes of Flight Review, episodes of Flight Chat, and of course Flight Speed and Friday Flight. With respect to those of you that are flight crew members, you get access to those episodes. Flight officers get access to everything. Patreon needs an overhaul, I think. We got to change some stuff up there. I'm going to be looking into changing a few things on Patreon as well. But hopefully those of you that are loyal members of Patreon are enjoying the bonus content. And as always, cannot thank you enough for your support to patreon.com/theflightcast. All right, people, let's get into it. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8, Full Nelson. The season finale. The much-hyped, much-ballyhooed season finale. Now, look, for the third week in a row, I did my usual procedure that I've been doing for the last 3 episodes of Peacemaker. I turned off all my notifications for Reddit and Threads the night before, and I stayed off of social media the entire day at work until I got home and was able to fully watch the episode on its own. And then, and only then, after that, was I able to did I even think about braving Threads or anywhere else on social media to even remotely possibly run into any type of spoilers or whatnot. And I would say that that was really only necessary for Episode 6. Right? Like, that was the big, because that was the big twist about Earth X. That was the big reveal, the Lex Luthor cameo and all that. That it was really only necessary for that, right? It really was not necessary for last week's episode. I mean, maybe a little bit more for last week's episode, but it definitely wasn't necessary for this week. And I'll tell you what, it went even longer, right? Because I turned notifications off. I go to work. When I got out of work, I went to go see Tron Ares. Like, I went and saw that movie, and I saw that movie like 2 hours after I got out of work. So I didn't get home until the evening time. We're talking like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. So I had been off social media for that entire day, and man, was it peaceful. I tell you what, if you have not taken a break from social media, and I mean like an extended break, and look, that was half a day. Take longer breaks. You have no idea how much peace you will return to your life if you just get off of the idiot box, the nonsense. You know, it's funny, they call television the idiot box. Nowadays, the idiot box a lot of times is our phones or our computers, and it's really just social media, right? If you disconnect from all the noise and from all the nonsense and from all the trolling and from all the bullshit of social media, you can return so much more peace to your life. And it was great. These last 3 Fridays, not having to deal with nonsense on social media about anything. And quite frankly, like, I watched the episode, like I sat down and I watched the episode. Actually, I edited and posted my review of Trine Aries first. Or at least I edited it and I had it ready to post later. But then I sat down to watch Peacemaker. And I will tell you that through this episode, like halfway through this, watching the season finale of Peacemaker, in my brain, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what Threads is going to be when I open it up. I know what the discussion is going to be. I know what people. I was already formulating in my head what people were going to say and what the attitude was going to be. I said, yep, I can predict exactly what this conversation has been like and how it is going to go. And I'll be damned if I wasn't 100% correct, because fans are nothing if not predictable in terms of their behavior. Now, let me be clear about something. I want to state my own preference, my own personal perspective on this episode, first and foremost, before I start talking about all of you and everybody else. First and foremost, was I underwhelmed by this season finale? Yes, I was. I was underwhelmed. Now, does that mean I didn't like what happened in the episode? No, that is not what that means. Here's the thing. And I teased this a little bit when I posted this on social media, because I said that I was going to make a comparison between this and The Last Jedi. And you may or may not like what I'm about to say, but I'm just going to throw that out there. Hey, it's all subjective. Here's my subjective opinion on the matter. Watching this episode, watching Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale, Full Nelson, felt like watching The Last Jedi. And here's why I say that. If you go back to 2017, if you go back to when I watched The Last Jedi, and I don't think I was doing... Oh, no, this show, the FLITE existed, but this show did not exist back then. So I have not done an actual podcasting review of that, but I've talked about this before, about how going into The Last Jedi, I had all these guesses and all these expectations. I'll tell you exactly what my theory was for The Last Jedi. My theory was Grey Jedi, based on everything that we saw in the trailers, and there was that whole line that Luke said about it's time for the Jedi to end. I thought we were getting Grey Jedi. And I had my brain and my expectations and my fan goggles on, and I went into that theater, sat down with my popcorn, ready to experience the Grey Jedi Revolution. I thought we were going there. I thought that's exactly where they were headed for the sequel trilogy in that regard. And basically every expectation and every thought that I had, every, presumption that I made, every possibility that I had researched from my perspective, out the window. Did not happen. Expectations completely subverted. Any theory that I could have summarized or thought of, completely not what the movie did at all. And many fans were in the same position as me. Now, maybe they weren't thinking Grey Jedi just like I was, but they had their own thoughts about where they thought Rey's story was going to go, where they thought Finn's story was going to go, where they thought everything with Kylo Ren was going to go, right? And we were all wrong. Damn near all of us were wrong. Rian Johnson took that movie in a completely different direction and expectation than any of us really had, as far as I know. Any people that I know, truthfully. And that's a big reason why, even though the critics liked it on the Hell site, the audience did not like it, because it subverted a lot of expectations. And that was really like one of the biggest examples of they didn't do what I wanted them to do that we've had in the last decade, was that movie. So many fans still despise that movie to this day and still call it like the worst Star Wars movie ever made. And just, it broke them to the core. It cut them to the quick. They still cannot fathom that movie exists, right? And that's when the calls to really oust Kathleen Kennedy and get her replaced with Favreau and Filoni so that they can make Star Wars great again. That's really where that shit started, right? But for me, I looked at it and I said, okay, you know what? And I told my friends and my coworkers this. I said, listen, that's the last time that I make any bold proclamations or grand expectations about Star Wars. Next time, going into a Star Wars movie, I'm just going to let them take me wherever they go. I'm not going to, no theories, no, possibilities, none of this, hey, maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen. No, none of that shit. Absolutely not. I'm just going to let the writers and the creatives take me on whatever journey they want to take me, and I will judge it fairly from that point on. Because that was when I really first started to see, like, when my eyes were really open to the idea that fans build up expectations so high and so incredibly gargantuan, and then when they don't happen, when the creatives and the director and the writer and whoever else goes in a direction that they weren't expecting, that they weren't calling for, that they didn't want to see, well, now it's the worst thing in the world. Now it's just, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they would allow that to happen. I can't believe this is what they decided to do. And it boils down to that one sentence. They didn't do what I wanted them to do. That is the beginning, middle, and end of just about every fan complaint with respect to anything. It doesn't matter what the franchise is. And at that point, I said, all right, no more of those expectations on Star Wars. And quite honestly, I have tried to do that in general with fandoms. I've tried to do that in general with franchises. I've tried to do that with Star Trek. I've tried to do it with Marvel and DC. I have tried. I have. But I will tell you what, I got caught up. I did. I personally got caught up. And this is where we can have a further discussion about fan expectations and whatnot. But basically, because of the hype and because of all the discussions that we were having and because of all the stuff that we were talking about and because of things that James Gunn purportedly said with respect to what was going to happen, right? And listen, we can argue, Anthony, I'm not interested in arguing, to be honest with you, but we can argue if we want to till the cows come home about, well, he really didn't say this, he said that. No, I'm not interested in arguing. I'm not interested in arguing like whether or not he said this or whether or not he should have hyped that up or whether he's speaking too much on social media or whether he's hyping up stuff too much or if he misled us. No, I'm not interested in any of those discussions because they're all irrelevant to me. It doesn't make, I don't care, right? People can feel however they want about this particular season finale. They can. If they want to feel underwhelmed, they're welcome to do so. And many of you who disagree with that may look at them and go, well, this is what Marvel has done. This is how Marvel has destroyed our ability to critically watch and accept things that aren't giant CGI spectacle fest. Yeah, you know what? People are allowed to feel that way, though, guys. They really are. And I don't just say that because this is a case where I may agree with them more than you. I would say this in general, right? Now look, the bottom line is I didn't dislike this season finale, but by the same token, it's not necessarily what I wanted to see. It's not the type of season finale that I wanted. But at the crux of it is that the biggest conclusion that I can come to with you is that I like season 1 of Peacemaker better than season 2. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It's not that big of a deal. That doesn't mean that this season was a wash. That doesn't mean that it didn't do a good job with it. No, here's what was great about the season finale of Peacemaker season 2. Here's what was awesome about it. Well, let's start with that. This episode was a masterclass of dramatic acting from a couple different people, right? I mean, we've talked before all season about how John Cena has really transcended the whole idea of being a WWE, wrestler turned actor, right? And now at this point, especially after the last couple of weeks, no, dude's an actor. He absolutely is an actor. Like, he has the craft. Like, he's got it down. Like, he knows what to do. He is a very good dramatic actor. He is. He most certainly is. The emotion is there. You feel it. The weight, the heartfelt nature of what he does. It's there, right? Like, he can pull it off. He's absolutely got it on screen. I also love watching him in interviews, him talking about, breaking down like the Chris Smith character and saying where he's at emotionally and whatnot. Like, that stuff I really enjoy. And it tells me that, yes, he is honing his craft. He is somebody that actually is an actor now at this point, right? So we can throw the whole wrestler turned actor stuff. Yeah, I think we can throw that away and say, no, John Cena is an actor. Absolutely. And then apart from him, Jennifer Holland, like across the way, I mean, what a bona fide piece of dramatic acting she's done the last number of episodes, really this whole season. Like, she has given us some range. She has given us some power and some emotional complexity as Harcourt in this season. And that's really what this season, you find out, has been about. It really hasn't been about the overarching plot. It really hasn't been about any of the bigger, implications for the DCU. I mean, they're there, don't get me wrong, but that's not really what this season of Peacemaker was about whatsoever. This was a very intimate, very character-driven, character development season. And the third actor that joined Cena and Holland as far as the whole dramatic acting masterclass was Danielle Brooks. Danielle Brooks was absolutely a tour de force in this particular episode. She was. And the power that she gave, I mean, those tears, where Adebayo is at this point, the two big Adebayo scenes, right? Because look, this isn't an episode that we need to break down in terms of what happens. Here's what happens. It's very simple. Peacemaker's in jail, right? Chris is in jail. And aside from the others wanting to get him out of jail and bail him out using the money from vigilantes, billions, not millions. They keep saying millions. No, he's clearly got billions down there in that basement. Whatever. You see how much money he's got on those pallets? Whatever. It's billions. It is what it is. But aside from bailing him out of jail, Argus is basically like being used as guinea pigs to like explore all of the doors in the QUC. And it's like, okay, well, agents are dying, and this is really causing Fleury and Bordeaux primarily, along with the rest of the 11th Street kids, to really question what the hell are we doing? Like, I mean, and it's such a juxtaposition. Like, there's that crazy sequence where like Argus lives are being lost, like agents are being like torn apart, bitten by zombies and shot in the head, ripped apart by little goblins and a fairy tale land and whatnot. They're risking life and limb, and literally like agents are dying in front of Fleury and Bordeaux, while Flag, it has lost his damn mind and is celebrating with all of Luthor's cronies from Superman. And you're just sitting there like, okay, I don't know what's happening here. Somebody on Threads suggested it was some sort of mind control or brain parasite or whatever, that Flag has just completely gone off the deep end and is completely a villain at this point, 100% in league with Lex Luthor. And it's like, okay, has vengeance consumed him this badly? Maybe it has. Perhaps that's the point. But he's lost his damn mind, and he's going down a very destructive and bad path. And so that's the point of this, is that Bordeaux and Fleury are like, yeah, we're done with this. And Economos and Harcourt and Adebayo are like, yeah, no more of this. We're forming our own agency. And with the help of Chris, after they bail him out of prison, with the help of that, they're the ones that decide to form Checkmate. And so now Checkmate is an official agency in the DCU. And I've heard that before, but here, let's go to the official ticker tape as far as the DC Comics history is concerned. Here's the history of Checkmate. According to the wiki, Checkmate is a fictional covert operations agency published in DC Comics. Anti-Hero Team first appeared in Action Comics 598, March of 1998, and proceeded to have its own ongoing title, Checkmate, in the wake of events depicted in the miniseries The OMAC Project and Infinite Crisis. Checkmate is rechartered as a United Nations Security Council affiliated agency and was again given its own series, Checkmate Volume 2. So, Checkmate's history is, it's an agency first set up by Amanda Waller to serve as a small branch of Task Force X under the command of Colonel Valentina Vostok, formerly Negative Woman of the Doom Patrol, to perform operations worldwide considered vital to the security of American interests. She relinquishes command to Harry Stein, who recreates the agency into a new image and organization dubbed Checkmate in relation to its chess-inspired organizational scheme. So, basically what we have here is James Gunn has taken a DC staple agency and now has given us the beginnings of the DCU format. Basically, the 11th Street kids have formed Checkmate, their version of Checkmate in the DCU. So it's them plus Fleury plus Bordeaux. Okay, so now they started their own agency. They're not working for Argus anymore. They're doing stuff on their own. Gotcha. And then at the very end of the episode, Flag has Argus agents take Peacemaker, take Chris Smith, and throw him on to Salvation, which is the new world that they found through the dimensional portals that apparently is going to be home for a massive supermax prison for metahumans in that regard. And that's basically where all metahuman malcontents are going to go, and they're going to move the portal so that they can't ever get back to that particular Earth if they wanted to, right? And so that's where, Peacemaker is left. That's where season 2 ends, is Chris is stuck on Salvation. And do the 11th Street kids know where he is? No, probably not. But that's where it ends, right? And so, like, based on that, that's what sets up the rest of the DCU. And as James Gunn has apparently told us, he said, and I'm gonna go right off of what he said on Threads here. This is in response to a question from Disgrace PRTY Ush, who asked him, can you please clarify how is that finale going to set up Man of Tomorrow? Like, I'm genuinely very confused about this, because he did say that. He said it was going to set up Man of Tomorrow. And Gunn's answer was, where Chris is at the end, what is happening between the government and the metahumans, Rick and Lex's new partnership, and all of their decision to do what they did is all a part of the future Man of Tomorrow and more. Okay, so he just says, well, Salvation and where Chris is like on Salvation, that's going to play a part in the DCU going forward. And of course, Ashton Murray 771 also asked him, "That was the craziest ending I just need you to confirm that we will see Peacemaker again." And he goes, "Of course, he's instrumental." Okay. So people who were concerned about whether or not there was going to be a season 3 of Peacemaker, maybe there won't be a season 3. Perhaps, Anthony, I think you were already speculating this, that the Checkmate series is going to get announced, and that basically it's not going to be Peacemaker, it's going to be Checkmate going forward. And Checkmate is going to follow, find where Chris is and follow the whole Salvation situation. Yeah, I could see that. I could absolutely see that based on what he has said so far. But that's it. That's essentially what happened. The other thing that we found out was we saw the incident on the boat that Chris was talking about, where he asked Harcourt if it meant something to her. And of course, she finally admits that it did. And he took like a bit of a victory lap on that. But yeah, we just saw that. I mean, this episode was consisted of largely emotional moments and character development moments and dramatic moments. And that's where I'll go back to Danielle Brooks, the two scenes that she had. Because first there was the scene between Adebayo and her wife, where she basically took what she applied from her conversation in episode 7 with Judo Master, who, by the way, Judo Master has also joined Checkmate because he had a moment where he almost fell into a black hole, and he's also decided, yeah, I'm done with Argus. I'm going to go with the guys here over at Checkmate, right? But Adebayo basically took her conversation with him and applied it and basically came to the realization that, yeah, the life that she wants is not the life that her wife wants, and vice versa, and it's not going to work out. And this is one of those painful, emotional conversations where you have to tell a significant other, someone that you've loved for the love of your life, I know this isn't going to work out. I know that I know that we're not meant to be together. I know that what you want is not what I want, and what I want is not what you want, and we need to split up, right? And it's painful, and it hurts, and it's emotional. Any one of us that has actually gone through that in real life knows exactly how incredibly heart-wrenching and just destroying that is. And all that emotion, all that wrenching, that heart-wrenching pain is on display from Adebayo, from Danielle Brooks, and also from, who is it that plays her wife? I forget her name. Her name is Kia in the show. Her real name, the actress, is Elizabeth Faith Ludlow, right? And so like that is, I mean, the pain and the tears that are in this particular scene. It's real, it's raw, it's powerful, and I mean it's both of these actresses, their range and power on display. But Danielle Brooks, my goodness, I mean she goes into like real emotional tears in this scene, and then later in the scene where they're really trying to convince Chris that he needs to not leave town and not consider himself a danger to everybody else, and that he's not the angel of death as far as anybody that cares about him and whatnot. And yes, we need you to be a part of this. We need you to help us do this. And they didn't mention Checkmate at this point. You don't. That realization doesn't come until later, but they just know that they're going to do something. They know that they have a plan, and they know that they want him to be a part of it. And no, I give full marks to Danielle Brooks for her dramatic acting in this episode. She was absolutely on point. She went to another level. She did. She went to a level that places her on the same pedestal as far as dramatic acting in this show with both John Cena and Jennifer Holland. Like, absolutely. Those two scenes, this was, in many ways, this was Adebayo's episode. This was her finale, if you will, and not the finale for her character, but just the raw power and the raw emotion that she displayed in both of her scenes just absolutely did the trick. Seriously, like she this was a tour de force, and that's the thing to realize about this season finale, is that it wasn't going to be an action fest, and it certainly wasn't going to be a cameo fest. This was James Gunn going full-blown dramatic character development with the end of the series, the end of this particular season. And there's a couple of things with this, because, I mean, the fan expectation stuff, I'll get back into that in a little bit here. But let's just discuss this particular aspect of it. Because somebody might be like, okay, well, why would he do that with this particular show, with this particular series? Well, in many ways, I will say that from an outside observation perspective, he kind of did it because he could, right? And it's not just because he's the boss, but he wanted to take this in a different direction. And this is where I really do separate James Gunn from Kevin Feige as far as like studio heads here, because this is not a Kevin Feige decision. This is not something that Kevin Feige would do. The closest thing that Kevin Feige would come to doing something like this is what he did with Thunderbolts. the way that that movie is all about superhero mental health. It's a mental health movie, right? And the way that that movie ends, which I won't spoil in case anybody hasn't seen it that's listened to this show, I, I imagine all of you have seen it, but if you haven't, whatever. But the way that that movie ends is very uncharacteristic of how we're used to movies ending, superhero movies and whatnot. Just as this is uncharacteristic to how we're seeing these types of superhero shows end, right? It's far more emotional. It's far more dramatic. It's far more personal. And it calls upon director and actor to really be at 110% and really pull as much of the, as much of the collaboration, as much of their chops, as much of their experience into the pool so that they can really give us something that is emotionally powerful and, heart-wrenching in many ways, so that we are left with something that is emotionally engaging and satisfying with respect to where these characters have gone and the journey that they've been on throughout this entire season. And that's what I do think this season finale achieves, most certainly. Now, is that what we thought we were going to get? Is that what we necessarily believed the season was going to be about? No. And that's why I don't get mad with fans who were underwhelmed by this particular finale. Underwhelmed by the finale, but whelmed in general by the season, I would say. Whelmed is where I'm at, right? Because to me, yes, there is definitely that part of me that expects like a bigger spectacle, right? And this is where we can have the discussion with respect to James Gunn hyping things up and talking about stuff. I think that where we're at, like at least this is where I'm at. I can only speak for where I'm at as a fan. Where I am at is this is my Last Jedi moment. And what I mean by that is I've talked about how with respect to, after The Last Jedi, I said I wasn't going to, try and get these big expectations and think of this and think of that, right? And I feel like in the last 8 years, I've done my best not to do that with any franchise. And I let my guard down. I did. As a fan, I let my guard down and I let my imagination run wild with me, especially because this is the birth of a brand new franchise, right? The DCU is in its infancy, right? It's becoming a toddler at this point because now we are an animated series, a feature-length film, and now a season of live-action television into the DCU, right? As far as any type of connective tissue and building out this universe, we're into that. We're getting there and we're getting it going, to be honest with you, right? So from that perspective, it's a brand new universe, and our expectations and our wildest imaginations, they run wild. That's what we do as fans. We speculate. For the last 10 minutes, I've been struggling. I'm like, there's an S word that I need to be saying here, and I can't think of it. Speculate. That's what it is. Speculation. Thank you, brain, for finally getting there. Wow, am I getting old? Oh, man, I don't want to think about that. Anyway, I digress. Speculation. I said I wasn't going to speculate nearly as much after The Last Jedi, and I really have tried not to until now. I let my speculation get the better of me with this particular season because not only of how young the DCU is and the possibilities where we can go, but also in terms of James Gunn hyping things up. And this is where I have to come to grips and understand this, is that James Gunn has this is where he has to split the titles, right? He is a creative and he's the co-head of a studio, right? So he's not just creating his own stories, but he's also the creative head of a particular studio of several different stories and a complete universe of tales and characters and whatnot that we're going to be seeing for the next 10 years. Hopefully. So I think there's a lesson that I most certainly need to learn and relearn in this case, but also a lesson that I think fans perhaps should learn, because I'm going to tell you right now, that our inclination, not just as fans, but as humans, is to blame other people for our emotions. And I see a lot of blame on James Gunn for this season finale. Not just in terms of being underwhelmed, but also in terms of, well, he's talking too much and he's chirping and he really needs to keep his mouth shut and stop hyping things up so high. I've seen this on Threads and I've seen this on Reddit. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, with respect to James Gunn's hyping things up and with respect to our expectations being set high, that's our own fault. It's on you with respect to your own personal expectations and your own feelings as a fan. It's on you. It is on you. It does not matter what he says. It really does not. You can sit there and swear up and down to him that he's lied to your face and that he's led you down a path and that he's misled you and that the reason you feel this way about being underwhelmed about the season finale of Peacemaker is because he promised you things that didn't happen. No, he didn't. He most certainly did not. Because if you really go through it, and we can argue till the cows come home about exactly what he said, but he didn't speak out of turn in terms of what he did. The point of his job, half of his job, is to create this universe. The other half is to hype it up and to market it. And we've talked about this, guys. Marketing is a part of being in charge of a studio like this. You have to hype things up. You have to promote things. You have to bring people into the tent. You have to bring people to the viewing spot to be like, hey, check this out. Hey, look at that. You've got to do it. You have to do it, right? This is part of the marketing dance, if you will, right? That statement that he made, that response, in terms of how what happened in this episode is going to affect the DC. Here, I'll read again precisely what he said, and I applaud him for putting the spoiler tags on it. But he answered this question and said, where Chris is at the end, what is happening between the government and the metahumans, Rick and Lex's new partnership, and all their decision to do what they did is all a part of the future, Man of Tomorrow, and more. Now, that's a very generalized answer. It is. It's an extremely generalized answer. The only things that are specific in there are the details that we already know from the season finale in terms of knowing that Chris is on salvation, that apparently there's now this rift where the government is now taking like direct action. The U.S. government is taking direct action to deal with metahumans in a more abrupt manner. And then this whole thing with Rick and Lex being partners, and we know how that's going to go down, right? So these are things, and like you said, all their decision to do what they did, part of the future and whatnot, right? It's a very generalized statement that builds upon what we've seen so far in this particular episode, in this particular show. So you can say that he's overhyping this too much, and you can say that he misled you. You can do all of that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you watched it. At the end of the day, you're talking about it. At the end of the day, the discussion is there, right? And it doesn't matter how many, because I've already seen Reddit threads and people talking about, well, this is the first time that the gun jammed, and now I'm worried about the rest of these. You know what? That's your fault. That is your fault. Take accountability for your own behavior and your own feelings with respect to this. James Gunn did not lie to you. James Gunn told you, hey, there's some stuff that's going to happen. Cameos did happen. Cameos did occur. We got Lex and we got Sidney Happerson. He did not say specifically who it was going to be, right? We are the ones that made the determination. When I talked about thinking that David Cornsweet Superman was going to be there, I based that off of a set photo between him and Danielle Brooks where he was in costume. Clearly, all that was, it's one of two things. Either Danielle Brooks visited the Superman set, or they shot a sequence for Peacemaker that involved him in it and it didn't fit. And to be very honest with you, I understand why it doesn't fit. I do. I get why it doesn't fit, because here's the thing. When I think about it from a thematic standpoint, from everything that we do know, right? Because here's where we're at. Here's where we're at the end of Peacemaker Season 2. The U.S. government has effectively found another dimension, salvation, that they're going to use as a metahuman prison, right? And they're taking very aggressive steps towards that with Lex Luthor's help, which is already a problem because we know how he feels about metahumans, okay? So we have that, and we know that Chris Smith, Peacemaker, is stuck on that planet, right? Like imprisoned there by Rick Flag in his fit of vengeance. And we also know that the Checkmate Agency has been created, and they're probably going to be investigating that on some level. So, knowing that, understanding all that at the end of the DCU, what we can potentially look at, or maybe not speculate, but we can ask these questions. And the first question I have is, what does Superman think about all this? How does Superman, because here, think about this, right? Think about going back to the Superman movie. Look at how Superman felt about Gurkos and Baravia and how they were dealing with Jarhanpur and how they were taking matters into their own hands. How is he going to feel about Flag and the U.S. government doing this with metahumans? And he already hates Lex. He already has an issue with Lex. So, to me, that's a situation where, okay, we need to find out later how Superman feels about this. We're not going to find out now, not immediately, how Superman feels about this. We're going to find out later in terms of like what his reaction to this is going to be going forward. And I think also part of that, you know, when people talk about the whole Marvel thing and how Marvel has ruined the conversation and we can't watch things like this anymore, I think that part of our speculation as fans is we're also looking for a linear progression, right? We're looking for the MCU type of connection here where it's like, okay, well, this happened in Superman. This now happened in Peacemaker Season 2. How is this going to lead? We wanted him to basically, this is where fans get tricky because without knowing it, you're asking him for MCU 2.0. You are. And mind you, again, I want to reiterate, this is coming from somebody that did feel underwhelmed watching the season finale. But the reasons that I'm seeing people be underwhelmed is because They wanted a grander spectacle, and they wanted things that they wanted more cameos. They wanted more of the bigger stuff. It's the multiverse of madness shit all over again. They wanted that, and they also wanted a direct through line to, how is this possibly going to set up Man of Tomorrow? You want the linear progression. You want the quote unquote homework problem, the one that he said he wasn't going to give us. And this is where fans can be really hypocritical, because on the one hand, you complain about a homework problem, but on the other hand, it's exactly what you want. It's exactly what you're asking for. It's exactly what when you complain about something like this and you go, well, how come this didn't go directly into that, lead directly into this? You're asking for the exact problem that you've been complaining about over on the Marvel side. And James Gunn has been abundantly clear that he does not want the DCU to be another MCU. And thank God that is the case. Thank the Lord, thank the Maker, thank the universe, thank Zod, whoever you got to thank, that he doesn't want to make this a carbon copy. I am very glad of that. So in many ways, as underwhelmed as I was by this season finale, I'm glad he did it. I'm very glad he did it. I'm very glad he subverted fan expectations, because that's the only way this remains fresh. That's the only way this doesn't become a carbon copy of what we've had for the last 17 plus years over on the Marvel side. And I don't want that for DC. All the success of the MCU aside, I want the DCU to be very different. I want it to be totally different. I want it to be structurally different. I want it to be thematically different for the audience, for all of us, than anything that we have seen before. And this is how you do that. When you lead us into a season finale that is all about emotions and personal character development, and then at the very end we get, okay, things are happening. And the emotions are at the crux of this, and this new checkmate agency is at the crux of this. But all of this is affecting the world going forward. But it's at a point where if somebody only watched Superman, but they don't watch Peacemaker Season 2, are they going to be lost when all the stuff comes up in Man of Tomorrow? Probably not. Probably not. Because there's probably going to be, at the very least, a refresher, right? Like some sort of, the Checkmate Agency does it. But Checkmate will probably be introduced to people in Man of Tomorrow, right? And I know I'm speculating a bit here, but I'm just saying, I'm not speculating in terms of what I hope as a fan is going to happen or what I think is going to happen, like with respect to my own personal expectations. I am speculating based on what they could do based on what we've now seen in this finale. And I already know what fans are going to say. I already know that coming out of this finale, people are going to, you're going to latch on, like at this point, we're going to be underwhelmed, right? There's going to be fans are going to be underwhelmed. And then they're going to take the important bits of information that we got from this finale, and then they're going to say, well, now let's see how much this connects to everything else, right? And they're going to be looking for it in Supergirl, and they're going to be looking for it in Lanterns, they're going to be looking for it in Clayface, and when they don't see it, they're going to be like, well, this is a problem, and they're going to be complaining about a homework problem that he said wasn't going to be there, that you shouldn't be asking for in the first place. Yeah, there's a lot of fan hypocrisy that goes on. We know this. And I guess that's really where I come down on this, guys, is I was able to watch the season finale, and even though I was personally underwhelmed by it, and even though I liked season 1 better than this season, I can still appreciate what James Gunn did. I can still respect his choices, and I can still really respect the hell out of the actors that, committed to this. Especially, like I said, Daniel Brooks was an absolute emotional tour de force in this season finale, right? Like I can respect all of that, and I can say, you know what? I am looking forward to the rest of the DCU. This does not affect my perception or my expectations or what I believe is going to happen with the DCU going forward. I trust James Gunn as far as a creative force. I really do trust that he's going to do some different things now, some subversion, if you will, because again, I think that's a good thing. Going back to my Last Jedi example, I'm not somebody that was, my expectations were subverted by the Last Jedi and it turned me into a bitter asshole. No, that did not happen. I actually looked at it and went, okay, they went in a different direction, and I liked that it was unpredictable. I liked that I was wrong. Because you shouldn't be able to go into a show or a movie or anything like that and completely predict all the shit that's going to happen. There's no fun in that, is there? Maybe it is for people who, I don't know. I just don't understand how for fans there's so much fun in watching something that they know exactly how it's going to happen. You don't like surprises? You don't want anything different? You don't want anything to turn a particular corner? No, of course you don't. You would rather things be predictable because you want to feel right. And I'm not specifically talking about anybody listening to this show. I'm just talking about fans in general. Those types of fans, they care more about being right than about being happy. And that's a bullshit way to live. That's an absolutely ridiculous way to live. But there are plenty of fans that are all up in arms about this right now as a result of that. So, one more time, just for clarification, as underwhelmed as I was by this season finale, I still respect it. I still thought it was good. And I still am perfectly okay with the direction that it took and the direction that this season took. Just because I thought season 1 personally, from my own perspective, just because I enjoyed season 1 better, does not make season 2 a pile of garbage or a piece of shit or whatever. Da da da. No, certainly not. Gunn took us in a different direction. This is what he wants to do with the DCU. I'm good with that. Yeah, I let my imagination get the better of me. I let my dark horse ideas on who was going to get brought back get the better of me. Now, that doesn't mean that the door is shut on my idea, by the way, right? That it most certainly is not. It just means it may happen somewhere else if it does happen at all, right? So the possibilities are still out there. And that is a testament to James Gunn in terms of, his hype and his marketing. So, no, I'm not going to tell you that I think he should talk less. No. You guys decide, we decide as fans how we react and how we respond to what he says. And if we take the bait, if you will, and if we, go down a rabbit hole that he didn't promise to us, that is on us. That is our issue, not his. He's doing his job. And so far, in these first 3 years of the DC Studios' existence, he's done his job expertly well, phenomenally well. Superman is in the public conversation. I know there's all this talk because of a piece recently that I haven't read fully, but I saw Dave talk about it on Film Junkie about this whole thing about whether or not Superman is actually profitable for Warner Brothers and about how, they've still got to tally up all these other numbers and whatnot. And I know that the toxic assholes and the anti-gun people and the Snyder cultists and whatnot, they're using that as ammunition to go, oh, well, see, it clearly bombed, yada, 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 this and that, whatever. I haven't delved into that further, but it doesn't matter because the DCU is here. DC Studios is moving forward. They've gotten the blessing from their current boss, and I don't foresee a scenario, truthfully, where even if the new bosses come into play, I don't foresee a scenario where they will interfere so heavily into what is happening because I think I've talked about this before with respect to, if Paramount does end up buying DC Studios. If Paramount ends up buying Warner Brothers and has DC Studios, I believe fully that David Ellison, the CEO of Paramount, I believe fully that he sees DC Studios as a mulligan for Paramount not buying Marvel back in 2009, right, before Disney did. And I don't think he's going to interfere with anything that James Gunn and Peter Safran are planning for the next 10 years because he wants content, he needs content, and if they're already rolling with plans and productions and whatnot, then he just wants to stay out of their way and let them do what they do, truthfully. Because they have an audience by the balls at this point. They have the DC audience. They have all of us here, right? It doesn't matter how underwhelmed, how disappointed you were in that finale. You're watching Lanterns. You know you are. You're watching Lanterns. You're going to watch Supergirl. You're going to watch Clayface. We're there. We're the built-in audience. And we're all showing up for Man of Tomorrow in 2027. We know that, okay? We're the built-in audience. The question is, how many more of the general audience will they pull in? We know how much of them they pulled in for Superman. How many more will they pull in for all the other projects and whatnot? So that's what it comes down to. So yeah, no, I have no issues with what James Gunn is doing. It doesn't matter. And this is where being responsible for your own emotions as a fan come into play. I can sit here and tell you that even though that season finale wasn't what I personally wanted, I can still say that's my decision. Those are my feelings. That's my choice. James Gunn didn't force me into that window. James Gunn didn't make me feel underwhelmed by the season finale. He went in a direction that was different than what I personally expected. That's on me. That is. And I can choose whether or not to support him or not. And any other fan can do so. I feel like a lot of the times the reason fans complain about when a creative goes in a different direction than they wanted, it's because they know they can't turn it off. They know they can't stop watching. So they're sitting there going, you know what? This is ridiculous. This is the gun jammed, and I'm worried about the direction of the DCU because you know that no matter what, you're going to keep watching the DCU. That's why you're upset. That's why you're bothered by it, because you know you're going to keep watching it, and you want it to be what you want because you're going to keep watching. And even if you start hating the franchise, you're still going to watch it because you hate watch, because that's how much of a petty bastard you are. That's how we are as humans. That's where we're at. That's how we live at this point. And I'm not being misanthropic. I'm not being negative on that. That's just from experience, especially seeing how fans behave on social media, as unrealistic to real life as that particular milieu is. So there you have it with respect to that. Not a massive breakdown of the season finale at all, because it's less about, again, we went through all the major bullet points, and all the big stuff that did happen. It wasn't what any of us was necessarily considering to be seismic on our ends, but it certainly will have implications on the DCU going forward, and we will talk about it when it pops up. And you know what? People will debate numbers, and they'll debate, how popular it was and whether or not the franchise is succeeding or not. But all that matters is that people are staying out of Gunn and Safran's way and allowing DC Studios to proceed with the DCU plan as they have currently constructed until further notice at this point. And so that's ultimately the gist of this and the bottom line of it. Peacemaker Season 2 was solid, very emotionally driven, very character-driven season, certainly surrounding Chris and his whole arc with respect to his emotions and his relationship with Harcourt and his relationship with the rest of the 11th Street kids, and basically everybody else, like all of them dealing with the fallout of what happened at the end of Season 1. Totally understandable, and we'll see these characters again. We most certainly will, right? And Gunn has said this, and I think we can all kind of extrapolate, like going forward, okay, everybody involved in this show, like all the major players involved in the show, anybody that's a member of Argus or Checkmate, we're going to see them again at some point. Now, where we see them again and how? Good question. Will Peacemaker morph into a Checkmate series? Maybe it will. Wouldn't surprise me if it does, and won't be bothered by that either, because then that means that we will be getting an ensemble show that will, Peacemaker's already an ensemble show, but now the plot line and the stories will focus less on Chris and more on the group, which I'm good with that. We've spent 2 seasons focusing on Chris Smith. We can now focus on everyone else. I'm perfectly okay with that, if that is the decision that James Gunn decides. If he makes the Peacemaker Season 3, okay, cool. He's still extrapolating Chris and whatnot, but hey, either way, I am open to it. And that is the ultimate lesson to take from this is, again, 8 years later, after what happened to me with The Last Jedi, the lesson once again learned. No more rampant speculation, no more letting my imagination get the better of me. I am now just going to allow James Gunn and DC Studios to take me on whatever ride they have decided to take us on going forward. So that is the lesson that I am learning, and I really hope that anybody else out there that was that underwhelmed or that disappointed by the season finale takes the same lesson and learns the same lesson. It does not matter what he tells you on social media. It does not matter what he markets. It does not matter what he hypes up. What matters is what actually happens, what is actually put out there, and how fairly we judge it based on what it is and not what we are expecting it or hoping it to be as fans. So there you have it in a nutshell. It's all subjective, as always. And that is going to do it for this particular episode of FLITE Box, the examination of Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale of Peacemaker Season 2. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting the FLITEcast. I know y'all have thoughts. I know everybody has thoughts, and I'm certain that the majority of our Flat Chat discussion that I will record tomorrow is going to be centered around this particular episode in the future of the DCU and all of James Gunn's behavior, whether you agree with it or not. But if you've got thoughts on that, and with respect to anything else with movies, TV, and other assorted media, you know where to find me on Instagram and Threads at The FLITEcast, on BLUESKY at FLITEcast. You can post on the posting for this particular episode on the FLITEcast YouTube channel. There's also the FLITEcast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.